Despite being the most played legend in Season 17, 99% of people playing Pathfinder don't actually know how to use him properly, and after having watched hundreds, or I guess maybe thousands of Pathfinders play, I have collected an extensive list of the most common mistakes that Pathfinder players make, and today I will share that with you guys.
When ordinarily it goes like this. I'm partial to doing it in the key of A minor myself.
I will be dividing this video up into different abilities and sections, so if there are any points or things you want me to bring up, keep watching. And if I ended up missing anything, of course you can let me know in the comments, but let's just dive into it. So the first thing I want to bring up is something that might seem obvious to some of you all, but it's actually quite a large problem for Pathfinder players in general. A lot of players forget that Pathfinder has one of the largest hitboxes in the game, and definitely the largest hitbox out of all the non-fortified legends on the roster. He's quite literally a walking, talking fridge. And forgetting that they are such a large and easy target, most Pathfinders usually get up really close when taking a fight, they don't do much mid-fight movement, or even worse, they don't play cover at all, making them extremely easy to beam. And that's especially frustrating for me as a spectator because you're playing a legend like Pathfinder who has the best head glitch in the game. I mean, seeing as he has a long, beefy 6'2", wait, 6'2"? Wait, how short are the rest of the legends? Wraith is 5'4"? Okay, these make no sense. I swear Pathfinder has to be at least 8 feet. Anyways, Pathfinder is a long boy, and thanks to that can see over a lot of cover that other legends simply can't. Meaning you can get behind certain taller boxes and still see the enemy, while only exposing your head. And the thing with Pathfinder in particular is that his head is, for whatever reason, really hard to track due to the model looking really iffy and inhuman above the shoulders in third person. So standing behind cover will stop you from taking a large majority of your damage. But if you do find yourself in a close range fight without cover, many Pathfinder players sadly rely on strafes to win their fights, and while strafes aren't inherently bad, they are definitely not the optimal way to dodge the shots if you're playing a long-legged, big chunky hitbox guy like Pathfinder. I love how Timmy in particular does his mid-fight dodges, which lean a lot more towards crouch spamming rather than just blindly strafing to the left and to the right. It's especially useful on Pathfinder as the big center of mass that most players tend to aim for moves a lot more drastically than any other legend on account of his height. Of course, with that in mind, you still want to avoid getting too close and rely on mid to long range weapons instead of going real up and close in person with, say, shotgun fights. But more on the loadouts later, as we will cover his passive instead. And believe it or not, for whatever reason, most Pathfinders don't use the passive the right way either. While many players know that, yes, scanning a care package with the Skirmisher ability will refund your ultimate cooldown, and it will allow you to do back-to-back ziplines to travel like really far, really fast, most seem to miss the important detail that scanning a package doesn't just give you a refund of your zipline, it also decreases the zipline gun's cooldown by 10 seconds every time you do it, up to 4 times per game. Meaning it can effectively lower your ultimate cooldown from 120 seconds all the way down to 80. So the next time you see a care package, even if you aren't going for the long boy zipline play, make sure to scan the package to get that ultimate cooldown reduction. Pay extra attention to the first 2 packages around the start of the game, as these will give you an instant buff to your zipline's cooldown. If you do have a zipline at the ready, you can get the most value out of your passive reset by making a zipline, I guess, anywhere. Even if it's just a tiny little bit ahead of you. Because it would just be such a shame to let your fully charged ultimate go to complete waste when it can be used even for just a fraction of a benefit. But that's enough about the passive, so let's take a look at Pathfinder's tactical instead, which most players still get so wrong it's almost a joke. Everyone's seen a first-time Pathfinder use a grapple where they just stick a random thing and have it pull them a little bit closer, which obviously is far detached from what you actually can pull off with a standard grapple and some practice. And obviously this won't be a whole video guide on how to do grapples, because I've already done that. I've made it in a previous video, I'll link it in the description, you can click on the screen. But there are a few habits that any Pathfinder player can pick up on to ensure that they get a little bit of a buff to any of their grapples. The first one, of course, has to be jumping when the grapple hits. If that's the only thing you start doing, your grapples will see significant improvement off the rip, since jumping right when the grapple hits will give you upwards momentum, with the addition of pulling you in, giving you so much more distance than you would just get from using a grapple from standing still or even while running. The second also builds on a very common mistake where beginner and even more experienced Pathfinders alike let their grapple go on for way too long. At best, they lose out on any movement benefit that the grapple could provide, or at worst, they get stuck in the grapple and keep swinging around until they eventually plummet to the ground. And the reason why the grapple doesn't detach is because you don't actually tell it to. A grapple can be cancelled and detached either by turning your view away from the grapple point around 90 degrees, so more or less right out of your field of view, or by hitting the grapple key or the crouch key instead. Some players may have gotten to this part and then believe that that's the only improvement that they need to do, but it turns out that, wait, there's more. In addition to knowing how to cancel the grapple and knowing that you should, not many understand when it should happen in order to cover the most distance. And the answer is pretty simple. If you're pulling off a grapple, you will generally want to detach right before the grapple starts slowing you down, which generally speaking is right after the initial peak speed from the grapple reeling you in. Pay attention to this and you will nail the timing in no time. And building off of the whole cancelling thing, this may be a great opportunity for you to incorporate feinting into your Pathfinder playbook. If you grapple in front of an enemy, most players will expect you to continue along the grapple's path, and position and prepare themselves to hit a nasty beam as you fly past. But here's the trick. If you think your enemy will try to predict this, start the grapple like you normally would and then cancel it as they seem to turn or adjust their aim. This will throw them off entirely and give you a lot of easy damage as they may just be looking the other way. The third isn't necessarily insanely common, but it is something that I see from time to time, so I want to bring it up. While Pathfinder can grapple and attach it to an enemy, which forces the enemy and Pathfinder to be pulled into each other, this is actually a huge throw on a Pathfinder's part, as the user being grappled is able to shoot the Pathfinder back during this animation, which is obviously super predictable trajectory-wise, as the two of you are headed straight into each other. So if you hit the grapple on an enemy and then you start shooting back at you, make sure to detach with one of the methods that I had mentioned earlier. Just keep in mind that you cannot detach by looking around because your camera in this state will be locked. The fourth very common mistake I see Pathfinders make with their grapple is engaging with it. This doesn't have to mean that they grapple straight into the enemy, though that is definitely something we've seen a lot of as well. I'm saying that if a Pathfinder uses their grapple to get closer to the enemy team, odds are they will take damage mid-grapple as they are exposed, and there's a good chance that the enemy team actually ends up punishing the lack of the grapple cooldown and the low health of the Pathfinder for an easy push and an easy kill. Try to keep your grapple available when making flank plays, unless you know that you will have it back in time. As for the ultimate, one of the most common mistakes when it comes to Pathfinder's ultimate has to be actually using it. Most players can hold on to the ultimate for the entire game, waiting for the perfect moment to use it, and either end up using it at an inopportune moment, or never use it through the entire game. It's even worse when they hold on to the cooldown and never scan a single care package with the passive as they walk by, as I mentioned previously, just because they might need it later. As I covered previously, the cooldown is so short of 120 seconds, even without ever scanning any care packages in the first place, so as long as there aren't any enemies nearby, there's nothing to really lose from trying to use the zipline as much as possible, even if it's just for rotating. If you have to get to a high ground or clear a larger distance, consider using the zipline to get to your target that much faster. At the same time, however, I have been gifted a lot of kills from Pathfinders mindlessly setting up the zipline to take the high ground or positions from other teams without actually thinking about it. If you want to zipline onto a high ground that an enemy is occupying, you either need to get game-changing damage on them or wait until they aren't paying attention. But even then, it's really risky, as they simply can just wait with healing up to beam you once you head up on the zipline, or just randomly end up looking your way despite not paying attention a second ago. Also, if you do use Pathfinder's zipline to aggressively take a team's position, you should probably think twice about how you set it up, because you can place the zipline at a bit of an off angle to make it harder to shoot down on someone from above, and there are ways to place it so you get launched onto the high ground, which again makes it a lot harder for the defender. And to actually make a zipline launch you forward as you reach the end of it, you want to place it at a 45-degree angle, just so you know. But while this is good as you're attacking and all, if your goal is to hold that position, you are making it so much more difficult for yourself to defend once you've cleaned up that first fight. so it's a bit of a double-edged sword. And other than the kit itself, there's one point which I touched on previously, and that has to be the weapon selection, and I guess the general positioning to go with it. Thanks to his mobility-based kit, Pathfinder has the benefit of being able to play wide off angles, on high grounds, and so much more, but despite this, most players go in head first wielding a close-range weapon loadout like the R9 and the Peacekeeper, and this will more often than not lead to them dying, without getting close enough to do any damage in the first place. Pathfinders should want to play a grapple's distance away from their team, in an off angle where they can just provide pressure onto the enemy team simply by existing, because providing pressure doesn't have to mean you have to deal damage. Just existing with the enemy team being aware of your position will make them way less able to make certain decisions or way less able to position themselves in certain ways, and alleviate a lot of pressure off of your team to make an opening on their own. And of course, once you are sure that the enemy team isn't looking your way to punish your massive fridge hitbox, you can start peeking and doing tons of damage if you catch them off guard. I would run mid to long range weapons on Pathfinder, so something like an assault rifle, potentially combined with a sniper or marksman rifle. You can get away with an SMG if you have good recoil control. And I really hope that recognizing these mistakes will stop you from getting yourself killed when playing Pathfinder in the near future. If you guys do want to learn about more Apex, you should probably check out the video on the screen. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all tomorrow. Peace out.